Hey everyone, I've been chasing down a little snap crackle pop coming up from the engine bay when it's warm. I'll drop a video in here just to kind of highlight the sounds that you'd hear from it. I was able to figure out where it came from the using a mechanic stethoscope, little cone attachment on the end there. Just kind of poked around to figure out where the noise was coming from. It sounded like it was in this area, and then it was just a matter of figuring out where specifically. It definitely sounded like it was coming from the alternator, but I couldn't confirm that until I took this little stethoscope up to the pulley, and it got very loud very quickly. So let's go ahead and dive in. Quick review on how we're going to be tackling this. I'm going to be trying to move as little as possible. I may have to take the radiator fan out. You can see that the intake duct's already been removed. The parts that are going to be put in, you'll see there the alternator pulley. It's right there. This is the piece that's going to get replaced. There's a clutch in there that eventually wears out over time. This inlet's going to have to come out. Possibly the radiator. The belt's going to have to be loosened up from the tensioner. Then the belt will pop right off. And it should just be a matter of playing with this guy in the alternator pulley and removing it. But we'll see what Murphy's Law has in store for us today. Quick overview of the parts that I needed. Got a part number here. It's an INA pulley, not OEM, but it's about half the cost. We'll see how it goes. There's a clutch in here that wears out over time. Definitely took some research and diving in the forums to figure out where this problem was sourcing from, but it sounds like this is a common issue in a lot of European cars. Also, we're going to have the little tool here to hold the pulley in place while we remove it once we got this area cleared out. Alright, so we've got the car jacked up. Remove the skid tray right there. And what we'll be doing next is just getting rid of this one T25 bolt right there. And pulling the radiator fan out after popping this coolant hose out, as well as this clip. Then it'll just be a matter of moving that inlet. After removing the dual cone intakes and the bypass valve to this way, to the left passenger side, and then pop the belt off. So a real quick demonstration of what one of these failing pulley looks like. So you can see here, here's the tool to lock the pulley in place. Slide that in. This is the old pulley, and you can see it's not much play there. It doesn't really go anywhere. It doesn't move. New pulley. Doesn't go one way, but spins freely the other way. Cool. All right, with that done, looks like we got the alternator pulley in 100% of the way. Funny thing about the torque specs, I think OEM specs the part at 80 Newton meters, whereas the aftermarket part the aftermarket from INA specs the part at 85. I just hit it at 80 to go from there. A couple of tips and tricks for getting through removing the alternator and putting it back on is, don't know if you saw in that time lapse there, but don't lose that. Essentially, you don't want to fight against yourself when you're tightening that up. The attachment for this is it's pretty loose, and you want to make sure these grooves are seated all the way in, as well as this inside of the alternator. But when you're at it, you probably saw that I use the tried and true wrench leverage. But when you're going through there, you don't want to fight against yourself, so you don't want to be wrestling with having to tighten it one way at like a 90 degree. If anything, try to keep them in the same parallel line, and that way you're distributing equal force back and forth, tightening that down. Also, if you haven't already, you want to make sure that you get to the belt tensioner and the other pulleys inside of this system. If you aren't too familiar with N54s and how wonderfully they eat belts, you want to make sure that you get to those. If you're doing this, you might as well replace the belt tensioner. If you're halfway through the job, you would just need to remove the tensioner. I think it's held on by the one bolt under here, and then if you need to, also the two pulleys that also come in the kits. So with that said, let's go ahead and wrap this up. We're gonna go ahead and kick this back on and see if I still get my noise. Couple of things to note if this is your first time messing with the radiator fan. Obviously this clip's a little annoying to get out. Make sure that you're very careful with this coolant line. There's been common reporting of people breaking this line, and it's very fragile over time, so just be mindful of that. You may have to replace that if it looks old. Again, repeating the fact that you should probably consider replacing your belt tensioner and your pulleys if you haven't already. Replace the belt while you're here. But as far as the radiator fan goes, there's two clips. You can see one right there that sits right into that groove. And similarly, there's one on the other side as well. Just be mindful of that, trying to navigate this when you're navigating this back down into its original location. And then there's a clip here too that goes up on to hold this radiator fan flush against the radiator. Another thing to note is that when you're working this down, if you have an upgraded intercooler, or in some cases maybe even not an upgraded intercooler, let's see if we can get a photo of this. So this is the 7.5 stepped intercooler from BRSF, and you can see that there's a ledge right up there where the shadow of my finger's landing. But this is a really tight fit down here. You have to come down here, move this back to the back of the car, and maybe even have someone from the top pull let me show what that might look like. You may want to have someone from the top pull this forward while you're trying to navigate it below and slide it into place. And it's probably one of the most difficult parts about the radiator fan. It's very tight in here. Obviously, zip ties to keep the inlets off of the belts, as you may have saw. But that about wraps it up. I'll see if I can get a video of what the car sounds like warmed up now. Thank you.